We're here at the Dunn Ranch, which is located in what we call the Grand River Grasslands, which is a 70,000 acre landscape located in northern Harrison County, Missouri, and southern Ringgold County, Iowa. And the unique thing about the Grand River Grasslands is that it was designated by multiple agencies, such as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, the Missouri Department of Conservation, and the Nature Conservancy, as one of the best places in the central tallgrass prairie ecoregion to restore a functioning tallgrass prairie, to develop it as a center for the development and export of prairie restoration information and technology. And in that regard, in the last 7 years roughly, we've restored or replanted more than 2,000 acres of tallgrass prairie here at Dunn Ranch. What's unique about the Dunn Ranch is that a portion of it, roughly 800 acres, have never been plowed. Don't get me wrong, it's been overgrazed over the years. It was part of a cattle ranch, but it still has all the characteristics of the original tallgrass prairie. It has 40 inches of topsoil. It has, over that 800 acres, roughly 250 to 300 species of native plants. Our vision for Dunn Ranch and the Grand River Grasslands is to restore a large-scale, functioning tallgrass prairie with all the ecological processes that were associated with the original prairie, such as fire and grazing by a large ungulate. We chose bison for the impacts that they bring to the prairie, the disturbances they bring, the way they graze. They graze grasses and sedges mainly. They don't eat so many of the broadleaf plants or forbs. So by eating the grass, they reduce the competition to the other plants, which allows them to reseed and increase the diversity of plants that we have here at Dunn Ranch. We basically use the bison we have here to manage the prairie. We typically will burn patches of the prairie each year, and then the bison are attracted to those areas that we burn because of the young regrowth, the succulent regrowth, and that's where they focus their grazing for that year. And they'll keep it rather short. And those areas are where we find that suite of grassland birds that are associated with a shorter grass, such as upland sandpipers. Then those areas that are 1 year post-burn, they'll graze moderately, and that creates a more moderate height plant community. And then there's a whole different suite of birds that will utilize that habitat. And then those areas that we haven't grazed or burned for more than 3 years, they hardly ever touch, and that becomes real tall and thick and dense, and that's where another suite of grassland birds such as Henslow sparrows will nest for the year. So that's how we typically manage the prairie with fire and bison. Right now our herd consists of roughly 71 animals. Their origin is from Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota, and that herd of bison at Wind Cave has been shown to date to be one of 2 herds in the United States that are free of cattle genes. And so the Nature Conservancy has taken the opportunity to help expand that herd. Wind Cave can only, because of the size of it, can only hold about 450 animals, and geneticists will tell you that it takes 1,000 to 1,200 animals to maintain the genetic diversity of a population. So we've taken the animals from Wind Cave and put them on 5 Nature Conservancy preserves here, 1 here in Missouri, in Iowa, Kansas, now in Illinois, in Oklahoma. And in those satellite herds, we now have more than 1,200 animals that are of the lineage from Wind Cave so that we can maintain that genetic diversity. We've restored or replanted roughly 2,000 acres of prairie here at Dunn Ranch, and the main thing I've seen from that is, I think the most dramatic thing I've seen is the increase of grassland birds. Grassland birds are in decline nationwide, worldwide, due to fragmentation of their habitat, breaking grasslands into smaller and smaller pieces, and by putting together this large grassland landscape, which is the jewel, Dunn Ranch, embedded in a private landscape of grassland that is managed for production, but managed in a way that is conservation friendly, we put together a large enough area that the grassland birds that are area dependent will now come here and utilize this. Prairies are important. Temperate grassland habitat is the least protected, most endangered habitat type worldwide. For instance, in the United States, there was once 400,000 square miles of tallgrass prairie habitat. Now less than 4% of that remains. In Missouri, a third of the state used to be tallgrass prairie. Now less than 1% of that still exists. So it's an extremely endangered habitat. It's one of the most biologically diverse habitats that we have. All the wildlife, birds, insects, everything that goes along with it because of that is also, in peril. The prairie is really the heritage of this area. It was tallgrass prairie, deep soils, and that was really the demise of the prairie, the highly productive soils that then were turned by the plow. But because of that deep soil and the plants associated with prairie grass, the roots of which go 12 to 15 feet in the ground, these grasslands, especially tallgrass prairie, are basically a sponge, and the benefit to fresh water is extremely important. When we get a 5-inch rain here, it all soaks in the ground, none of it washes off. And then over the next 2 weeks, it's discharged into the streams like you see behind me that we can hear gurgling behind me. In the city, where you've got a lot of hardscape, blacktop, mowed, manicured lawns, you get a 5-inch rain, it all flushes into sewers and it goes to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's extremely important and it has value for fresh water, drinking water for the communities downstream of us. So those are the main reasons we're interested. The Nature Conservancy is interested in tallgrass prairie and seeing that it's restored. The prairie has always been special to me. I started my career with the Missouri Department of Conservation as a wildlife biologist, and that was back more than 30 years ago. And one of the areas that I first managed, called the Helton area, contained this 10-acre piece of ground that one of my fellow employees pointed out to me that there's some really strange plants growing out there, and come to find that this was, well, at the time, it was probably the most diverse remnant prairie left in North Missouri. And I went out there and saw things that I had never seen before, plants that grow no other place, and it just really intrigued me. At the time, I was getting interested in Lewis and Clark. I was reading their journals and real interested in the way things used to be. And here I stumbled across this little gem that was under my control, 10 acres, that has almost 300 species of native plants on it now. And since that day, I was pretty well hooked. I became interested in finding remnant prairies on the areas that I managed and restoring them. And then I had the opportunity, while I was still with the Conservation Department, to work with the Nature Conservancy when they first bought this place. And by luck, it just turned out that when I was retiring from the Missouri Department of Conservation, they were looking for a new manager here at Dunn Ranch. And of course, I jumped at the opportunity to come here because it's just, an ecosystem that I love. I'm a birder as well. I love all the birds, the grassland birds that are associated with this. And it's really tough to come to work in the morning, not punch a time clock. I pull up at the office 1.5 miles away in the distance in the middle of the prairie. I hear the prairie chickens booming. I hear the upper sandpipers calling and doing their dance and their mating dance in the sky. You know, it's a tough job, but somebody had to do it, so that's pretty much why I'm here.